AI is the most exciting thing that's happened in reputation management in a long time. It's the first time when people are actually able to fully communicate with the search engine. For the first time, you expect the engine to really be an answer engine instead of just a search engine.
I'm so excited to have you here, Sam. I know that Five Blocks has been doing a lot of great work in terms of reputation management over the years, but I know that we met earlier this year and talked about how AI is really changing reputation management and what it looks like. So I'm just curious for you if you could give me and anyone who's watching this video some sort of a few ways that AI is changing reputation management.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, Chris, thanks for having me. This is fun. So I think AI is like the most exciting thing that's happened in reputation management in a long time. I think that Google kind of cornered the market on online reputation. I think brands are always thinking about the way to project their reputation is through their own website, through social media, through how they interact with the media. And Google has always been or for many years at least, has been the main platform that brings it all together. So if you want to find out about a brand or an executive, you want to make decisions about who you want to work with, or what company you should work for, or whatever decision you're making, Google has just been the most natural place to go. And that's been great. And we've had a lot of clients over the years who've needed to help optimize their Google results. I think what happens with AI is that things just get so much more interesting. Google, if you think about it, is a great platform for the first step in researching something. It's like, tell me about, most of the searches in Google, many searches in Google are really very simple. It's the name of a company, the name of an individual, maybe some other modifier. You just want to find out about a brand. You maybe want to find out about a comparison. But you're quite limited in what you're expecting the search engine to do. You're expecting it to bring you back a variety of different pieces of content, whether it's earned media or owned websites or Wikipedia or social media. And we're kind of happy that we got used to, you ask a query about, you ask you put out a keyword search, and you get some documents or web pages about that. AI changes everything for us because it's the first time when people are actually able to fully communicate with the search engine, say, I'm actually looking for a specific kind of information. I don't want to know Coca-Cola. I want to know, tell me what Coca-Cola is doing in terms of sugar. How are they addressing that issue? Or I can look at a brand, but I'm not looking for the brand in just careers. I want to know, is this considered to be a good place for a first job in a particular IT or something? And you can, for the first time, expect you expect the engine to really be an answer engine instead of just a search engine. And I think that's the first thing we think about when we think about AI, is just that the expectations of what the search engine can do for you are going to change radically. So that's the first thing.
That's interesting. An answer engine instead of a search engine. There's a lot of conversation around AI that is negative and focuses on a lot of the issues surrounding AI. And full disclosure, there are many. I know that there are some news organizations, most notably the New York Times, who is suing to make sure that AI tools like ChatGPT and others cannot index its information and ingest it into its data set. But I don't think that there are, when you mentioned an answer engine versus a search engine, it dawned on me that I don't think there's a lot of conversation about the benefits of AI-powered reputation management and search. Can you talk a little bit about some more of the benefits of having an answer engine, and not only that, but like, what are some things that people aren't talking about that are the benefits of AI-powered search?
Yeah, I think that some of the benefits that we're already seeing, and I think that the kind of the general public will see, when you have the ability to actually ask the question that you want, you can save a tremendous amount of time. Think about you're thinking about a decision. I'm a mountain biker, and I'm thinking of maybe upgrading my mountain bike. So right now, the way that you search that, you would say, what are the top 10 mountain bikes, whatever. And then you say, okay, well, I'm more of a downhill guy, so you'd start getting the search in that way, and you'd say, okay, well, I want to see some reviews about this, and you would you kind of would proceed through the search step by step by step, and it would realistically probably take you a very large number of steps. And along the way, you could actually encounter lots of information that's not what you're looking for. You might have difficulty telling what has been paid for, whether this is a review or an advertorial. I think the promise of and we're already starting to see this in, I think Perplexity is an interesting AI search to look at. It is actually, it's on the very basic level, it's saying, you want the answer to a question. I'm going to go look at a whole bunch of web pages that maybe have parts of that answer, and then try to put them all together and give you an answer that's much closer to what you're looking for. And so I think that what's interesting is that even in such a short period of time that we've been experiencing, the different AI models that you can use as search. And I'm thinking of ChatGPT and Gemini, Copilot, and then and Google's AI Overview. So all of those, I think, and Perplexity alongside them, but Perplexity is really I put it in its own category because it really seeks to do a search, take those answers and kind of summarize them. The other engines are doing something a little different. They are using a combination of the large language model that has been built and also the web. Actually, I could even say that we saw Perplexity come along, and then we saw kind of all of the engines did a little perplexification, if you will. Like they all became a little bit more like Perplexity, and a great example of that, which we saw, it was pretty amazing, was we did a test in which we looked at the 20 last Wikipedia pages that were launched in what's called patrolled, where they've been released into the wild and okayed. And we found that within 10 minutes, each of those AI models, when asked, was using Wikipedia immediately. Like it didn't need to retrain. They're all finding the ways of integrating, understanding your question, taking the large language model to understand your question, to understand where the kind of the directions of the answer, but then using live web data and updated web pages to bring it all together. So I think that's the real promise, and that's where we're going, is the ability to kind of synchronize information and kind of make it more meaningful than we did in Google. And that's actually what's amazing there, is that it takes us to a place where we're starting to have different expectations of the search engine. We're already seeing it now. I'm not going to be satisfied with this is kind of the answer you're looking for. I want sources that tell me. I want to understand who says that this is the trend that's happening, or these are the numbers. And I want to more and more. I'm going to expect the AI. I actually don't even. At some point, I think we're going to stop caring that it's AI. I think right now we're very excited because it's AI. But I think it's in the same way that we don't really care that much as a user how Google works. We just know that if we have certain types of queries, we get really good responses. I don't really necessarily, on the day-to-day, I don't really necessarily care exactly how it works. I just want to get really good answers. And so these AI models, they're going to cut out a lot of steps for us. Of course, there's these issues. They still make up things. They still, I just did a query earlier. I was curious if there are any Fortune 500 company CEOs who don't have Wikipedia pages. I asked each of the AI engines this, and each of them came back to me with some answers, and they were wrong. They do have Wikipedia pages. So it was kind of interesting. So I think these are challenges. I think they're going to be dealt with, because no one's going to really just like we wouldn't use Google if it was absolutely full of spam. Google's done a pretty good job of narrowing down and focusing on the kind of sites and answers that we'll accept. And I think that the AI models are going to do this as well. I just think that it's just going to cut out a huge amount of wandering around looking for where do I go now, where do I go now, and how do I get to my answer that I want. And I think it'll also change the way we think a little bit, because we're going to expect, we're not going to be happy with like, give me some things to chew on. We're going to want it to go all the way to give us the answer that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the changing expectations. I think it's also going to have to change the way that we think about reputation management, right? I mean, you talked about the perplexification of search, right? I'm really excited that I nailed that on the first try. But one of the things, one of the issues with perplexity that people complain about is that it does such a great job of bringing in all of that information from other websites into its page, and you can now create perplexity search result pages of themselves. But a lot of publishers who've built their businesses on traditional search engines, sending traffic their way, and then obviously being able to generate ad revenue and other revenue, are complaining about that. So, and then of course, obviously, if these other search engines kind of take the perplexity model and sort of bring everything internally rather than push traffic outward, it then changes the sort of approach that companies with respect to reputation management used to employ for years, maybe decades, with respect to backlinks, authority websites pointing at them, etc. So how should someone sitting in a corporate communications role right now, whose job it is to focus on and manicure and protect their company's reputation, how should they be thinking about reputation in the age of AI?
That's that's the $10 million question, I guess. But it's interesting because we actually we look at that question and we say, okay, well, what do you do in the world of Google? What do you do? You think about, how do people search? Then you check and see, what do they see when they search, and you think about, how can I influence that equation? It's hard to change what people search, but you can start to understand, what is it that Google shows when people search, and then what are the qualities that you need to have in order to appear more prominently. So translate that into the world of AI, and you start to think it's a bit different. But what you start to think is, people have specific types of questions or topics that they're interested vis-a-vis your brand. So we think about, oftentimes with our clients, we're thinking about, if it's a corporation or a brand, we're thinking about, people are thinking about it from the perspective of, for the investment perspective. So is it a good stock? How's the company doing? Is it, what's the employer brand if I want to work there? What are the products like? What's the quality of the products? Is there people, ESG is really important. So people are like, is this a good company from an ESG perspective? So there's all these different kind of lenses that you look at a brand through. And what we're doing is, we think that you need to kind of get some experience and see, for every brand, look and see, what does ChatGPT say. Let's assume that for many brands, it's just the general search for the brand. Your Best Buy, ChatGPT, tell me about Best Buy from various perspectives, and just see what you get. And then do the same thing with Copilot, with Gemini, with AI overviews. And in each of those cases, you'll start to see certain patterns. What are they getting right about your brand? What are they getting wrong? Why are they, are they focusing on things you don't like, on things that you do like? The next thing to do probably is, almost every brand that we encounter has like peers or aspirational peers, and they're like, oh, well, those guys, they always get treated better than we do. I think it's really instructive to spend a little bit of time just understanding, what are the AI saying about my peers, my aspirational peers, whether I'm an individual or whether I'm a brand, that's the best way to understand, what could AI be maybe saying about me, who I want to be. I as an executive, 5 years from now, I'd like to be kind of like that executive. So let's see, what does AI say about them. You start to see these patterns, like what are the kinds of questions, what are the kinds of sources that are being utilized, what is the kind of content that's being presented, and our thinking, just as with Google, is kind of map out for yourself, how should our brand be perceived? What do we think the AI should be saying about us? And then start to think, like, where would it be getting that information? Almost always, what you realize is, oh, there's a vacuum. The reason why an AI or Google isn't really presenting what I want is because actually the content either doesn't exist or is not as robust, or Google doesn't trust that content for whatever reason. I think when you're going back to your question, if a brand is thinking people are going to start to see my brand, or they're going to start to see my executives through the lens of AI, I think you need to think about, are we saying on our own, earned, social, paid, community, all the different kinds of platforms, are we actually answering the kinds of questions that people are asking? Are we providing robust enough information? The answer is oftentimes no. We work with a lot of B2B brands, and I find that a lot of B2B brands, financial services companies, for example, but others as well, a lot of times their websites are a really nice brochure about the company. You can find out who the executives are, the stories, a little bit about the products. They don't usually feel the need to go into all the details of their products or services. And maybe brands need to start thinking about a future in which people are going to say, compare for me the services of this company with other similar companies, or which company, which of these financial advisors is deals with this issue the most, currency transfers, or whatever the specific topic is. And our advice would be, if right now you have on your website 20 FAQs, you might want to start thinking about a future where you might want to have 1,000 FAQs. As crazy as that sounds, because imagine every time, if you have an FAQ, if you have questions and you provide robust answers which are true to your brand, they really reflect something, you could end up being the source that the AIs use. And we've seen this already now, even in the early days, but we've already seen that if you ask a specific question, the AIs, if they find that question in their training set, or if they find it on the internet, someone who has asked that question and answered it, your chances are skyrocket. So if you're a B2B brand, or a B2C brand or manufacturer, any kind of company, if you have rich information about products and services that are yours, or about the industry, and you provide those in a question and answer format, your chances of being the source for AI answers goes through the roof. You start to be a player when it comes to which companies do this, which companies don't, because the AIs see, well, you've got the answers to all the questions. You become a hub in the same way that it did in Google. If you had the answers to all the questions, you became. That's why when you look up a general topic, you look up something that has to do with insurance. Some of the top insurance companies have been so robust in the content they produce, they'll be there together with review sites and together with the Wikipedia article about that topic. You'll see some of the real providers of information. Do you want to be a provider of information about your company, your brand, your products, or would you rather someone else tell that story? Would you rather AI just make it up? So that's I think the best advice I could give is start thinking about all of the questions that you would like to have your brand be the answer to, or have where you're going to be the provider, and start thinking about having much more robust content, starting with your own website.
Wow, that's amazing. 1,000 FAQs. I'm already imagining a whole bunch of RFPs going out to agencies. Like, you got to help us get these together. We can only come up with 100 at best, But I think it's interesting, and kind of leads me to my next question, which is about content. It could very well be that what you're describing in terms of 1,000 FAQs and becoming sort of like the go-to source of this information, and also even the way you talk about financial services websites. And full disclosure, in a previous life, I was a web designer, and I've designed a whole bunch of financial services websites, and can tell you that, yes, they prefer that they be brochures and don't really have a whole lot of information on them, because the people that they really want to speak to, they believe know what their products are and everything. But if you want to win the game in terms of reputation in the age of AI, that has to change. So I guess my question is everything that we've known and thought about with respect to reputation management out the window, or are there certain things, or in your estimation, in your observation, is it most of it still the same? Most of the way you approach reputation management is the same, but there are some critical differences, like having 1,000 FAQs, or really sort of structuring data. I remember reading that structured data sets are really preferred by AI models and everything. So are those some things that people should be thinking about? Like keep the foundation, but think about these other additions to the house.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually we think about it as it when you first think about it, you're like, well, this is absolutely revolutionary. Everything is changing. But then when you get a little deeper into it, you're saying, okay, but in the end of the day, like people are going to ask questions and they want to get answers. And what's happening is the kinds of questions they're asking, yes, they'll become more complicated. They'll become more direct. And the kind of answers they get will also be hopefully more specific, more bespoke. But ultimately, the sources, which is the bulk of the work, are going to be much the same. Meaning, Wikipedia is critically important to Google results, and it's also critically important to AI because it's just a great source for AIs. They have lots of information. It's very well structured. To your point, we know everything is in a particular order. It's been gone over by people. It doesn't mean everything in Wikipedia is factual or unbiased, but it is much better than relying on blogs or relying even on corporate websites, which will slant things, or even on media, which oftentimes has a very particular slant based on the type of publication. So I think like those are the same. I think that corporate websites are central. Your own, when you look up a brand in Google, the corporate website is oftentimes, almost always, is the first result, because people, when they're searching, they actually oftentimes just want to get to a website. They want to know, and who has the most robust information about a company? It's the company itself. So those things haven't really changed. So I think it's more the real changes, I think, are in Google, and this is a funny thing to say, but in Google, it was kind of easy because if you created the right content for your own website, and this is still true, you create the right content for your own website. You are participating in social media as appropriate. You have business profiles for your brand. You have social profiles and so on. You are featured in media. You can actually get to a point where most of the results on page 1 and 2 are things that you wanted to be there, more or less. And then you can deal with a bad news story that you don't like, or something that takes you down a different path. And then the solution to those things is usually get more of the media that you do like. Be very specific about how you're optimizing the entity and so on. In AI, it's a little bit harder because there is no page 1 and page 2. You can't pack out page 1 with owned content, because if someone asks a question and the right answer is in an article or in a podcast or in a YouTube video that that you didn't write and it doesn't express your point of view, it is still going to be there. So there isn't a way of pushing things off of page 1 or page 2. What there is again, similar to Google, you can be more and more robust with the content you're providing, put it out in more places. I just think that I think that this is all going to force companies to think more holistically about what is it that people want to know. How can I contribute to that? How do I make sure that I get my share of voice, not just on my own, starting with my own site, but also how do I participate in the Wikipedia community's decisions? How do I ask for the things I want there in an appropriate way? I'm not seeing at the moment, I'm not seeing social media playing a massive role. Actually, I think because social media is so easily abused, you could, create bots that create all kinds of, content. And so it seems like social media is part of the story, but the AIs don't seem to be overrun by it. So in short, I would say it's completely different and also exactly the same. It's an evolution rather than a revolution. A piece of content that was on page 20 would never be seen if it is the exact answer to a question that someone rarely asks. Then it's basically going to be on page 1 for that person.
So you just you just gave a whole lot of people who used to have my former job as head of digital at a whole bunch of PR firms a lot of heartache because one of the tricks in our arsenal was to create enough content to show up in that first page of Google results to push all the negative stuff off and into the second or third page. And so now they're having to rewrite that playbook, which I guess it's been the same playbook roughly for the past 25 years. So it's about time. But I think that we can't really talk about reputation management without talking about crisis. So, I think, how do you think AI and AI powered reputation management can help in the age of a crisis? We already know how it can hurt in terms of, you mentioned bots. We didn't even talk about deep fakes yet, but how can it help and be a benefit?
Yeah, so I think the what we talked about earlier, the fact that the AI engines are all realizing that they're not going to be relevant if they don't integrate information now. The example I gave with Wikipedia, I was shocked because we know that even when Google sees a new Wikipedia page, it doesn't put it at the top of the results, usually for a few weeks. So to see it happen in 10 minutes in AI kind of was this like lightning bolt. I'm like, oh, AI based engines, they're trying to get you the best answer. And if you're asking in a crisis situation, uh, there's so many searches around a brand. There's suddenly 10 times as many searches around a brand, or around a product or whatever the crisis relates to. In that moment, the ability, knowing that if I put out a statement on my own website, if I'm vigilant about my Wikipedia, I'm doing press releases, knowing that the AIs will quickly pick it up means it's going to add urgency to the brand response. It could be, there's always urgency to brand response, not that you need more urgency in a crisis situation, but knowing that people are trying to get to the bottom of something, like something just happened and it appears to be a crisis, and now and you can search and say, what is the latest news on this thing, and knowing that the AIs are going to respond very quickly, I think is going to hopefully cause brands to engage more. I've seen, I'm sure you've seen many times, you've probably done this, I haven't, where you actually are formulating the precise wording that's going to come out, and you take a few hours to do it. It could be that there's just not going to be the ability to wait that long because the types of searches are going to be quick. They're going to be very, very quick, and they're going to be very specific. So it's possible that brands, I mean, I know that a lot of brands already do this, already are kind of ready with the FAQs about a crisis that hasn't even happened. Should we have a data breach? What would be all the questions that we would have to deal with? Well, these are the 50 questions, and let's populate all the answers. And so I think that it could be that in that kind of situation, the preparedness ahead of time will be more, because you're going to know that this is a faster a cycle. And with AIs actually going and grabbing new content all the time, you could actually put something out and then update it, put something else out. So I think it's going to be some new challenges, but I think that the search for getting down to the right answer very quickly is going to, I think it's just going to force brands to give more robust answers in crisis situations. So it's going to be hard for the brands. It's going to be good work for the PR people. But I think that the other thing I think is interesting is, and that I don't know enough about, is how fast does an AI get over a news cycle? Google, one of the problems that we see in reputation management with Google is that oftentimes for a brand, the crisis or the issue that they're concerned with may have happened a little bit in the past. Maybe it was a month ago, maybe it was a week ago, but it still appears to be front and center when it comes to Google, because Google has a difficult time understanding whether something that happened 2 weeks ago is the main thing people want to see now, or should it be kind of fading out. The newspaper knows that if something happens, you only print it on the front page today, but you don't keep printing it on the front page every day. That would be ridiculous, right? But Google, in some level, kind of prints it on the front page of your brand newspaper every day until it gets moved off. So it'll be interesting to see how that works in the different AI models. I think they're going to have to figure out what is it that people want to see, and so I think that there's a lot of unknowns, but I think that there's overall some danger, but I think that some opportunities because of the real time aspect of it.
Well, once again, you've just imperiled about 25% of someone like me in my former roles, revenue for the next quarter, because you're right. That would be one of the number one reasons that people will call us and say, hey, listen, there's all this stuff, this old crisis or whatever it is, something from WikiLeaks, from years and years ago, that's still showing up when you search our company's name or our executive's name, et cetera. Or we're about to go through a merger or acquisition, and here's this old stuff popping up about our CEO or senior executive. So it will be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But what I'm hearing is that the old is new again. I mean, you spend a lot of time talking about websites, right? There wasn't that long ago that people thought websites were a thing of the past. You didn't need them because social media was the thing, right? And now I'm hearing websites are very important in the
Yeah,
age
I
of
agree.
or AI powered reputation. I read the other day about blogs taking on more importance. So it's really interesting that as much as as far as we come with this new technology, that we're starting to see some of the older technologies that we thought were passe becoming a bit more relevant. But one of the things that I talk about a lot in AI workshops that I do for corporations is about the human element. I always say that that it's not the robots that we have to worry about, it's the humans. And if we end up years from now in this dystopian future, it'll be because of decisions that we made. And I also say that any of one of us can open our email or open up our social media feeds and instantly see the impact of the power of generative AI to create content. And we can see that sea of sameness, and the opportunities lie in integrating the human touch. So from a reputation management perspective, what are some, in terms of keeping that human touch, what are some ways that people, companies, corporate communicators should think about bringing the human element, not just a technological element, but bringing the human element into reputation as it relates to AI?
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think the human touch that's going to be the big differentiator. Everyone will be able uh, to to create something that kind of looks like content and has all the right qualities and is even in the same way that everybody that every company can make a corn chip or something, but it won't be the same as when you get it homemade. I think video is going to be huge because I think that it'll probably be a while before fake video will actually feel as authentic as real video. And so when a differentiator, when you can actually um, go to learn about a brand and then you see the brand, you see video clip in it. I don't think people need 30-minute video clips, but I think that having 1 minute about a brand or 1 minute or 2 minutes about a company or about a product, or you may even see a future where to make things more authentic, you're going to see individuals, on a bio page. I haven't seen this yet, but maybe you'll see in a corporate bio page where the person actually, you have an option to actually hear that person speak, and say 2 words about themselves. I know when I write a proposal for a brand, I do this every time for a brand or an individual. In the background, while I'm working on the proposal, while I'm researching, I run a YouTube video that I find online of that person speaking, if it's a CEO of a company or someone explaining the brand, because there's something about hearing the brand talk about themselves, hearing the individual talk about themselves, that gives me something real. So that by the time I'm like deep into writing a proposal or researching, I kind of want to feel like I had an experience where I understand how they talk about themselves. And so I think that video is key. And by the way, for anyone that's not obvious, that doesn't think it's obvious or doesn't know, the AIs can already now extract text from video. YouTube is obviously simple because you've already got the text available. I was playing with Gemini, and you can actually, with Gemini Pro, I believe you can just give it a URL of a YouTube video and say summarize this video for me. You can actually give it. It could be a 4-hour video. Just summarize this URL for me, or what's in this video. But you can even say, is this a positive or negative for the brand from a reputational perspective? And it will come back to you and say, well, here's some pros, some cons. So there's video is a kind of content that AI knows very well to understand, and I think that it also it communicates authenticity. I think that the thing that, as with all the great things that AI does, and we use it every day for our work. We use it to check our work. We use it to ideate. I think that there's so many great things about it. It does not. We are not finding it to be consistently coming up with real great original ideas that are meaningful and impactful it's a helper. I'm thinking about a name for a new service. It can really help me do it. It's like a somewhat smart assistant who needs some iteration maybe. And it's super helpful. It really is. But it's I think that brands are going to be authentic when they you have to. There's something about understanding the real needs and communicating it in a way that's nuanced. And as I said, I think video is part of it, but I think that also I think that you feel it when text has been written in a way. I think the AI can, if you feed your product information to an AI and you say, can you write me this thing? You'll get something reasonable. I think that when a human comes in, kind of breathes life into it and uses the right examples that are really impactful and meaningful, it's going to be the cooperation between those two.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that ironically, when you talk about how useful video can be with working with AI, I think that AI and tools like Riverside, the interface that we're using to actually have this conversation, have really helped to make video production a lot more accessible. And even things like you said, like coming up with transcripts on the fly and captions and all of those things, and even shorts and those kind of things that used to take tons of time. AI is making that a lot easier, so that it's possible for corporations, internal communications teams, etc., to be able to put out high quality video at an affordable price, much more affordable than it was 5 or even 10 years ago. So I think that's a very interesting point, and I think that I do agree with you that it would make a lot of sense when you talk about the human element to sort of integrate video where you can, to be able to sort of bring that face forward. I think it'd be a great thing on about us pages, or corporate bios or whatever, to have a 30-second clip, even if you think about it from a talent perspective. There are certainly jobs that I've had in the past where I would have loved it if I could have seen some video of the person that I'm going to be working with and working for, and seen sort of like what they're like when they talk. Do they seem like they're empathetic? All of those different types of things that kind of give me a sense of who I'm going to be spending so much time with and who's going to be really important to my career. So it makes sense, and I think that, and certainly in the context of how reputation is going to be working moving forward with respect to AI, I think that companies would be smart to do it. You talked about how 5blocks is using AI, and I thought that this is a question that I get a lot of times: is how do I keep up? How do I stay up on things? How do I continuously learn? Especially since typically, like it is with any sort of technological revolution, there aren't a lot of established learning tools yet, right? There are some things out there, but this all exploded onto the scene so quickly that there isn't that robust, trusted ecosystem of learning tools that are out there that you can say, okay, if I want to get up to speed on these things, I can do it. So how do you, I know that you mentioned a few ways, but are there any go-to sources or methods that you want to share?
Sure. So I would say this. So first of all, I think that we make it collaborative. Our team we're just about 60 people now, and we have it's almost become a bit of a challenge in the team. Like who can figure out smart ways to use AI in our work. And I'll give you a couple examples. So there's a bit of almost like a friendly competition. People, I think that. In the course, I use social media in various ways, and I watch some YouTube shorts and occasionally TikToks and things. And so there's a few people, I don't remember the names offhand, but there's a few people who will give their daily tip, in a quick video. What are the cool things they're seeing in AI? Really easy to find those. So those are great to have, kind of, because they're even though I don't necessarily use those particular AIs, it jogs your mind. It says, the company's using AI to do this. Did you know that you could have it go over your calendar and find gaps? Did you know that and it's really just kind of opening your mind to the opportunities and possibilities. So something that so I would recommend reading up or either subscribing to or reading up on what are the I actually get I think 2 AI newsletters a day. I think there may be one from Axios that I get, and I believe that there's another one as well. And the main thing is I just take a peek at it and look at something, and it just kind of, I just want to always be sparking with some new interesting things. I don't, you don't. I think there's so much that can be done. It's probably not worth looking into everything. And the main thing that we're doing though is we're looking at all the processes that we do in a regular day. So one of the things we do is we're looking at we're trying to help a client, and we're looking at their Google results across a bunch of different locations. So we were doing that by hand for a long time. So we have tools that collect for us the Google results, let's say for a fast food chain, and we collect it, let's say in 20 cities or 50 cities, and it can put it all into this graphic, and we can look at it. But in order to figure out like what's happening, what cities are doing better or worse in a particular area, we were literally having to kind of like mark it up by hand, like put it into the tool and mark it up by hand. Now we've found that we can, through trial and error, we've found that you can upload that content to ChatGPT or Claude. I'm a big fan of Claude, and particularly with Sonnet 3.5, which has come out recently, is very, very powerful. You can just feed it a file and then give it a set of instructions, and it pretty quickly understands what you're trying to accomplish and starts doing analysis for you. And when you do that, you actually can take work that used to take used to take half an hour, and get the first run of it, in 30 seconds. Sometimes you need to refine and to ask the query a little bit differently. But that is, so I think that the combination of knowing what's out there and what are people using different AI tools for, and then looking at the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis and saying, is there maybe a faster way to do this using AI? I wonder if there's an AI that does this. I wonder, and like pretty much every day we come up with like a thought, and I'll give you an example. One of the things that I found out, a few months ago was that AIs are really good if you give it a letter of engagement. A lot of times we write a letter of engagement, and we are basing it on a previous letter of engagement, and so we can feed that to an AI and say, this is a letter of engagement for a company that wants to do a Wikipedia audit or whatever, and these are and just check it over for me. Make sure does everything make sense? Are there any extraneous names? It's such a fast way to just check things over. I have it if I'm writing an email that's really important. I will feed the email to AI and just say, like, just look this over. Is there anything? Is this is it overly professional or overly friendly or whatever I'm going for? I can ask. So it's I think that it's a combination of knowing what some of the tools are, and then having multiple people in the organization who are challenging themselves to find good ways to use AI. Now, I don't think that you should be forcing AI in places where it's not helpful. Like it's not actually a good idea, I think, to have AI write all your emails. Your emails are going to start sounding a little odd. And people are going to feel it one way or another. I think that I don't think they should be writing all your proposals either. But I think that finding those places where this is a thing I do every day and I do it many, many times, I could probably give some instructions to an AI and have it get me most of the way there. So I think that's what I recommend, and I think that success breeds more curiosity. And I think sometimes we do things with AI that haven't really been done before, so I think that's I think everybody will have that experience as well as the unique ways we work.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I love the idea of gamifying, coming up with new ways and new innovations with AI within a team. So that's a great pro tip. Along the way, you brought up something when you talked about feeding the sort of data into the AI so it can read it faster. And it just reminded me of, a debate that sometimes happens within the community where people come to me and they say, hey, we talked to this other expert, or we read this article that said, don't put any of your company information into, ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that. And from my perspective, my thought process is, if you have something like a capabilities brochure that's out there, a marketing materials that are out there, a website where that information is out there and probably already been it's already probably ingested that information anyway. There's no harm in putting that into a chat GPT. But actually, from what you're saying, it sounds like not putting that information into the chat GPTs, the Geminis or Perplexities or whatever it might be, not letting them be indexed is actually potentially harmful.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think, obviously there's data privacy issues, and everyone. I think that obviously companies need to be super careful about what they're sharing. If they have private information, if they have anything that not that I think that the AIs are when you submit a document, they catalog it and start distributing it. That's not exactly how they work. But I think that you really have to be careful about what you're sharing. But at the same time, I think that any information that you want people to know, you should be freely submitting and putting out there. And I think that I guess we don't really know how each of the models work, and we don't really know whether if someone's asking lots and lots of if a million people are asking on different AIs about your company, is that going to have an influence in how how much how often your own brand is being presented as a leading company? I think we just don't know exactly. So I think it's finding the balance between protecting private information. Certainly, you have to abide by all the rules and regulations regarding private information. Certainly, if you're in healthcare, financial services, and other places where there's really sensitive information, even more so. And I think I wouldn't send your key algorithms through. And it's an interesting question. I know that our tech team, whenever they have questions with code, they'll feed the code to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you check a look? What this doesn't seem to be working. What do you think I'm doing wrong? I think that that's probably appropriate for code that's not your proprietary, IP and so on. But I think that it'll probably be important for people not to be submitting things that they don't want shared widely, because you never know.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. So, last question. For a head of comms or communications executive who is listening to this conversation and their head is just spinning,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just, oh my God, there's so much information. I don't even know where to start. What is the one thing that you'd say, if you don't remember anything else, this is the one thing that you should take away from this conversation?
One thing. I would say this. I would say, I'll make it a two-part one thing. I would say this. I would say you should know for your brand what you want people to find. I think we usually don't think about that. We usually start from the other side. We usually say, what are people seeing? And how do I fix that? Or how do I change that? Or how do I upgrade that? I think that the one thing you should be thinking about is, what is the ideal online presence for me? How do I want my brand, or me as an individual, whatever the topic is, how do I want to influence that? What do I want people to think about it? And what that's going to lead you to is, it's going to lead to a mindset of curation, rather than a mindset of, like exterminators or something. Like, I think that a lot of times we think about online reputation, we think about the thing we don't want. I don't want people to think about my brand like this. I don't want people to talk about my CEO's salary. He doesn't like that. He doesn't want. And so instead of thinking about what you don't want, I would say think about what you do want, because that will lead you to a curation mindset where you're thinking about, what are the kinds of questions people are asking? What do I need to put out there? Where are all the places I should be putting that out there? And that is, I think that's just a far more productive mindset to be in than the negative mindset of, what do I want to prevent? Of course, there are things that you want to prevent. I just think that, hopefully we don't wake up in the morning and say, here are all the 3 things I don't want to happen today. We should wake up in the morning and say, here are the 5 things I want to happen today. And of course, there's things we don't want to happen. But I think that positive mindset and looking at that'll lead you to look at Google, look at Wikipedia, to look at the AI engines, to all of these things as opportunities for you. They have pitfalls, and you have to watch out for them. But let's put most of our energy into those opportunities, knowing what we want, going and getting what we want, figuring out how to get there. So I don't know if that's one thing, but maybe as one thing I'd say, maybe be deliberate, and everything else will follow from that.
No, I think that's great advice. To add to what you're saying, I think that a lot of people think about what they want and not really think about how people search. And I think that was a point you brought up before. And I think that's really a fascinating way of looking at things. That same head of comms or communications executive, I'd imagine, is probably thinking, I should probably get in touch with Sam. I should probably get in touch with 5 Blocks. I'll obviously include the URL to your website in the show notes, but how best should they come in contact with you and your content?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a lot of times the best way is just to hook up on LinkedIn, and just direct message. That's a great way to start. We are our whole kind of way of thinking is collaborative. We're very transparent. When clients or companies work with us, or even if they just call us to have a chat, we will share the things that we know. I kind of think of myself as like kind of a chef that goes on TV and they make their signature dish and they show you exactly how they did it. That doesn't make you think you don't need that chef anymore. That makes you you learn something, and maybe you want to work with that chef. You want to go to their restaurant. So really, as our kind of the DNA of the company, we're very much into sharing information and knowledge. I would invite anybody who has questions or potentially challenges or things that they want to work through, to just reach out through through the website, through LinkedIn, whatever is most convenient.
Well, I can corroborate that. I mean, as much as I thought I knew, whenever I would link up with you, you'd always send me slides and everything that captured things like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about searching for our brand or our client's brand in Asia or in Europe or whatever, what those results might look like. So, I definitely can co-sign that. And I'm not just saying that because you're a guest on my podcast. You've been a partner with me before. So, Sam, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to want to hear more. So, thanks for sharing that information, and hopefully folks reach out because they're going to need you.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's been a pleasure, and as you mentioned, I think we've worked together and we've known each other for a bunch of years, and it's very exciting that you're doing this, and let's keep it going.
Absolutely.